Alright, so today we're gonna go over how I went about making this piece right here. Um, this is kind of a abstract surrealist style that I've built up over the past year, and it's pretty simple concepts, so if you want to, you can try and make something like this yourself. Alright, so first thing, you're gonna want something to paint on. Um, I like canvas, but you can honestly use whatever you want. Cardboard, as long as it's not the paint doesn't warp the surface. So don't use like printer paper or something. But if it's a hard surface and it's going to retain its shape, then go ahead. If you want to, you can use gesso and sand that down and get it a bit more ready for paint, or you can just jump in and start painting. Um, the goal of this style of painting, I think, is when I was taught how to paint and how to make any kind of art, it was a lot of uh, trying to like plan it out and stick to this set of what you wanted to achieve. And while that can make some really awesome art, I have a tendency to get really bored really quickly with that because I like know what I have to do, and it's just I have bad attention or bad attention. Um, so with this, basically, what you're going to want to do first is basically choose what colors you want to use, the kind of shapes you want, and just fill the canvas with paint. Um, this is more of a kind of painting from feeling, less painting from uh, a realistic or determined outcome of what you want the piece to look like. So really this is just going in and painting what you want, and then you just keep painting until you have an outcome that you like. Um, I think with a lot of painting, you really want to study the masters, figure out what they were doing, and try and kind of not copy, but teach yourself based on what you see within their works. This, you can do that. I definitely have some painters that have inspired how these eventually look, like Alex Gray and a lot of the more surrealist painters. But my personal advice is that if you have specific like kind of aesthetics you like, try and just surround yourself with those, and then capture that feeling and then put it into the painting. I like a lot of like nature stuff, so I use a lot of organic shapes in my pieces, but I've also done pieces that are look more almost industrial style shapes. Um, I think this style of painting is really more about bringing order out of chaos. So you want to basically cover your canvas in just whatever colors and shapes you want to use. Doesn't really matter. If you have some understanding of color theory or um, aesthetics and what's the word I'm looking for? Composition. That will be really helpful because you can kind of piggyback off of that. But the real goal of this style of painting is to enjoy the process until you have something that you like. It's really it's really about like being able to just go in and paint whatever you want whenever you want. Because like you can see kind of in the background there, I have some pieces that are a little bit more realistic, but I've been working on them for months just because like I don't want to go back in all the time and like keep working on them, because like I know what I have to do, and that kind of just gets me bored if I'm not in the mood for that. So I like to have pieces like this where I can just go in and just enjoy the creation process without having to worry about like if it's going to turn out right or not, because if it doesn't, I can just keep painting until I'm happy with what it looks like. Um, One thing I would suggest for people who want to paint like this is when you're starting to cover the canvas with like as much paint as you can, try not to use black yet, um, just because it's a lot easier to start from light to dark than to work back from dark to light. So I don't use any black until I'm working through like the detail process at the very end. Until that point, I just use white and any other color that I feel like, and trying to use the cooler colors for the darker areas and the warmer ones like the red and yellows for the brighter areas. Another thing is I know you can see those white spots in some of the areas where there's paint. That used to really, really bother me for a really long time, because I liked to be a bit like, tried to be quick about my painting, so I wouldn't do too many layers. I would like just try and get it looking like the final product as soon as possible, and that would always leave those white spots that you can see everywhere. And I had some painter at some point tell me what those were called in the art world, and I honestly can't remember for the life of me. But if they're bothering you, don't worry about it too much, because when you go into the detail process, it'll be a lot easier to cover them up. So just kind of worry about getting as much paint onto the canvas now as you can, and if you end up covering them up, then that's great, and if not, then when you go back in with detail work, it'll be a lot easier to cover it up. I think the main thing you want to be trying to do at this point is, now that you're kind of getting most of the canvas filled up, really, you still want to be working in broad, because with painting, most art, you're trying to work from broad to specific. And so use your bigger brushes, and just try and put in the shapes and colors that you want. And don't worry too much about how it looks yet. Just put the colors and pigments and everything where it feels right to you and where it's aesthetically pleasing to you, because this is, I guess, creation in its like really true form. And so now that you've got the whole thing figured out, covered, this is the final piece. We'll go back in, I'll upload another video where I do a little bit more of the specifics, because that's a bit more fun than just covering your canvas with paint. So yeah, I just wanted to show you this so that way you get a view of the outcome after having put all the work into it, and I'll see you in the next video.